My name is Ethan Carter, and until a few months ago, I believed I had my life completely under control. At 36 years old, I had built a successful career as a senior executive at a multinational technology company, owned a modern apartment in the heart of the city, and was in what I thought was a stable 2-year relationship with a woman named Chloe. Looking back, I realize I ignored countless warning signs because I believed loyalty and patience could solve almost anything. Chloe loved expensive restaurants, luxury brands, and posting glamorous moments online, while I preferred quiet evenings, meaningful conversations, and planning for the future. We were different, but I convinced myself that those differences made our relationship stronger. I couldn't have been more wrong. Everything changed one Thursday evening when she invited me to the restaurant where we had celebrated nearly every important milestone in our relationship. I assumed she wanted to discuss our upcoming vacation or perhaps our plans to move into a larger apartment. Instead, she arrived unusually confident, wearing a smile that didn't match the seriousness of the moment. She barely touched her meal before calmly explaining that she wanted to end our relationship because she believed we were no longer heading in the same direction. According to her, I had become too predictable, too focused on work, and no longer exciting enough for the life she wanted. I listened without interrupting, believing the conversation couldn't become any more painful. Then she leaned back in her chair with an unmistakable look of satisfaction and revealed that she had already met someone else. She described him as ambitious, fearless, successful, and destined for greatness. She proudly announced that he was taking her on a luxurious first-class vacation to Paris that weekend and emphasized every expensive detail as though she wanted each word to hurt me. She spoke about 5-star hotels, fine dining, designer shopping, and romantic evenings overlooking the Eiffel Tower. It was obvious she expected jealousy, anger, or desperation from me. Instead, I felt something completely unexpected. The moment she mentioned certain details about this mysterious new man, a strange sense of clarity settled over me. Every description matched someone I knew remarkably well. His name was Ryan, and only 3 months earlier he had joined my department as one of the company's newest executive interns. Ryan was undeniably intelligent, confident, and exceptionally talented. But he also possessed an arrogance that concerned me from the day we met. He believed rules were obstacles meant for ordinary people and acted as though success entitled him to ignore limits that everyone else respected. Despite those concerns, I had personally approved his participation in several high-level projects because his academic performance had impressed senior leadership. As part of those responsibilities, I authorized him to receive a corporate expense card that could only be used for approved business travel, client meetings, and project-related expenses. Very few interns were trusted with such responsibility, but management believed Ryan represented the future of the company, and I agreed to give him an opportunity to prove himself. The card carried a generous spending limit because our division frequently handled international clients and urgent travel arrangements. Every transaction made on that account required my approval, and I had complete visibility into every purchase through the company's expense management system. As Chloe continued describing her extravagant trip, the pieces came together almost instantly. Ryan's internship salary certainly couldn't support first-class international flights or luxury accommodations, costing thousands of dollars. There was only one realistic explanation. He had decided to treat company funds as though they belonged to him. The realization didn't make me angry. Instead, it made me remarkably calm because I knew I didn't need revenge. Ryan had already created the evidence that would destroy his own future. I simply needed to let him continue making mistakes. I maintained a polite expression, wished Chloe well, and casually asked what time her flight departed. She happily gave me the airline, departure time, and even the flight number, believing she had delivered the final blow to my confidence. Later that night, after she returned to our apartment to collect her belongings, I sat alone in my home office and opened the secure corporate expense portal. Within seconds, my suspicions were confirmed. The transaction history displayed an astonishing list of unauthorized purchases that grew longer every hour. 2 first-class tickets to Paris, an extravagant suite at one of the city's most luxurious hotels, expensive airport lounge access, and several additional travel charges had all been placed on the corporate card assigned exclusively to Ryan. The total already exceeded $20,000, and every charge violated company policy. As I reviewed the records, I realized This wasn't simply poor judgment. It was deliberate financial fraud carried out by someone convinced he would never be caught. Chloe believed she was leaving an ordinary man for someone extraordinary. What she didn't know was that the man funding her dream vacation was using company money that I had personally authorized, and the authority to end his career rested entirely in my hands. The following 2 days passed with surprising calm. I went to work, attended meetings, approved reports, and behaved exactly as I always did, never giving anyone the slightest indication that I knew about Ryan's misconduct or Chloe's new relationship. Every few hours, however, I quietly checked the corporate expense portal, watching new charges appear almost in real time. There were payments for airport lounge access, premium dining, luxury transportation, and other travel expenses that had absolutely nothing to do with company business. Ryan wasn't even trying to hide what he was doing. His confidence had crossed the line into complete recklessness, and every unauthorized transaction created another piece of evidence against him. By Friday evening, I was sitting comfortably at home with my laptop open, following the live status of their flight. Once the aircraft finished boarding and eventually crossed the Atlantic Ocean, I knew there would be no easy way for them to reverse course. Only then did I begin taking action. First, I prepared the official termination notice that would immediately end Ryan's internship for gross misconduct, misuse of company property, and violation of corporate financial policies. I submitted the necessary documents through our internal system so HR would receive them the moment business resumed, then sent Ryan a brief message informing him that his employment had been terminated effective immediately and that further communication regarding the investigation would come directly from the company's legal department. Next, I contacted our 24-hour corporate card administration service, identified myself using my executive credentials, and reported the card as being used for fraudulent personal expenses. Because I had originally authorized the account, I possessed full authority to suspend it without delay. The representative reviewed the recent transactions, confirmed that none of them matched approved business travel, and immediately deactivated the card while opening a formal fraud investigation. I also requested that any pending hotel authorizations and outstanding charges be frozen until the company's finance department completed its review. The entire process took less than 10 minutes, yet those 10 minutes completely changed Ryan's future. Once the card was canceled, every reservation depending on that payment method became vulnerable. The luxury hotel would no longer have a valid guarantee, additional purchases would be declined, and any attempt to withdraw more cash would fail instantly. I closed my laptop and spent the rest of the evening reading a book, feeling neither angry nor excited. I simply understood that I had fulfilled my responsibility as a senior executive, protecting company assets. Nearly 8 hours later, my phone began vibrating repeatedly. The first incoming call carried an international country code from France, followed by another and then another. I ignored each one without hesitation. Soon after, messages from Chloe started flooding my phone. She demanded to know why Ryan's corporate card had stopped working, why the hotel reservation had suddenly disappeared, and why he had just received notice that his internship had been terminated. Her messages quickly shifted from confusion to panic as reality settled in. They had arrived expecting a luxurious vacation only to discover they had nowhere to stay and almost no money available. She insisted that I fix the situation immediately, claiming I was being vindictive and heartless. Reading those frantic messages, I felt no satisfaction, only certainty that actions have consequences. Ryan had chosen to misuse company funds, and Chloe had chosen to place her future alongside someone she barely knew because she believed appearances mattered more than character. After allowing dozens of desperate texts to arrive unanswered, I finally sent a single reply. I reminded her that she had described Ryan as an ambitious man capable of giving her everything she wanted. So I suggested she trust his abilities to solve the problem without my involvement. After sending that final message, I blocked her number along with every social media account connected to her. Within hours, a few of her friends attempted to contact me, insisting there had been some terrible misunderstanding and urging me to help the stranded couple return home. I ignored every request. There was no misunderstanding at all. Ryan had violated company policy in one of the most serious ways possible, and Chloe had willingly embraced the life he promised without asking how he could suddenly afford such extravagance. They had built their dream vacation on dishonesty, and the foundation had collapsed the moment accountability finally caught up with them. The following Monday, I arrived at the office earlier than usual and scheduled meetings with our human resources director, the finance department, and my immediate supervisor. I presented every piece of evidence in chronological order, including the expense reports, travel bookings, credit card transactions, and the authorization records proving that Ryan had used company funds exclusively for personal luxury expenses. There was no argument to be made in his defense, because the documentation spoke for itself. My supervisor thanked me for acting quickly before the losses became even greater, explaining that allowing the card to remain active could have exposed the company to tens of thousands of additional dollars in fraudulent spending. HR immediately finalized Ryan's dismissal, revoked all company system access, and referred the matter to the legal and compliance teams for further investigation, rather than viewing the situation as a personal dispute involving my former girlfriend. Senior management treated it exactly as it should have been treated, a serious case of financial misconduct by an employee. My decision to stop the fraud immediately was officially recorded as responsible executive leadership, strengthening my reputation within the company instead of damaging it. Meanwhile, news of what had happened slowly spread through mutual acquaintances. A colleague eventually told me that Chloe and Ryan had spent their first night in Paris desperately searching for affordable accommodations after their luxury reservation was canceled. With Ryan's corporate card disabled and his personal savings nowhere near enough to support the trip, the glamorous vacation Chloe had proudly bragged about transformed into an exhausting struggle simply to find food and a place to sleep. Eventually, Chloe swallowed her pride and called her parents, admitting that the extravagant getaway had collapsed because Ryan had been paying for everything with company money. Embarrassed and furious, her parents reluctantly transferred enough money to purchase 2 economy tickets back home, ending what was supposed to be a week of luxury after only a couple of miserable days. Returning home did not improve their situation. Their relationship quickly deteriorated under the pressure of financial stress, public embarrassment, and constant arguments about who was responsible. The confidence Ryan once displayed disappeared almost overnight, as he realized he had destroyed the career he had spent years preparing for. Chloe, unwilling to accept responsibility for her own choices, attempted to rewrite the story by telling friends that I had abused my authority out of jealousy. According to her version of events, Ryan had been unfairly targeted simply because she chose someone else. Unfortunately for her, facts are difficult to erase. Every financial record, company policy, and official document clearly demonstrated that Ryan had violated the rules long before I took action. When gossip failed to gain traction, Chloe tried another approach. She emailed me demanding the return of expensive gifts she claimed to have given me during our relationship, and even suggested she deserved financial compensation because of the time and emotional effort she had invested in our life together. The list included furniture, electronics, artwork, and household items that I had personally purchased years before we ever met. Rather than responding emotionally, I forwarded the message directly to my attorney. Within days, she received a formal legal response explaining that her claims had absolutely no legal basis and providing receipts proving ownership of every item she mentioned. The letter also warned that any continued harassment, false accusations, or defamatory statements could expose her to legal consequences. It additionally reminded her that while the company's investigation remained focused on Ryan, anyone knowingly benefiting from fraudulent corporate spending could potentially become relevant during future legal proceedings if new evidence emerged. That warning accomplished what endless arguments never could. Almost immediately, the rumors stopped, the emails ended, and every attempt to contact me disappeared. For the first time since the breakup, there was complete silence, allowing me to move forward while Chloe and Ryan faced the consequences of decisions they alone had made. Nearly 4 months passed before I heard anything significant about either of them again, and by then the consequences of their decisions had become impossible to ignore. Ryan's professional future had collapsed far more completely than anyone expected. The company's legal department formally demanded repayment of every unauthorized expense charged to the corporate account, totaling well over $20,000, while warning that failure to cooperate would result in civil legal action. His internship was permanently terminated. His name was placed on the company's internal do not rehire list, And because the program was closely connected with several major employers, news of his misconduct spread quickly throughout the industry. The business school where he had been completing his MBA was also informed that his internship had ended because of serious ethical violations involving company funds. A student once considered one of the brightest prospects in his class suddenly found himself explaining financial misconduct instead of leadership potential whenever future opportunities appeared. Chloe's life unraveled just as quickly. The relationship she had abandoned. Everything lasted only a few days after returning home because Ryan could no longer provide the exciting lifestyle that had attracted her in the first place. Instead of luxury vacations and expensive dinners, he faced debt, legal problems, and an uncertain future. Their arguments became constant until they finally separated, leaving Chloe alone, embarrassed and financially exhausted after spending much of her own savings trying to recover from the disastrous trip. Since she had already moved out of my apartment and had nowhere affordable to live, she eventually returned to her parents' home, forced to rebuild the very life she had proudly claimed she had outgrown. About a month later, she created a new email address and sent me one final message. The email shifted repeatedly between blaming me for ruining everything and apologizing for the way our relationship had ended, but nowhere did she truly accept responsibility for the choices that had brought her to that point. I read every word only once before permanently deleting the message and blocking the address. There was nothing left to discuss because closure doesn't always require a conversation. Sometimes it simply requires accepting reality and moving forward. As for me, life steadily improved. My work continued to flourish. Senior leadership trusted my judgment more than ever, and I finally had the time and peace of mind to reconnect with friends, focus on my health, and enjoy a quieter life without constant drama. Looking back, I never considered what happened to be revenge. Ryan wasn't fired because he dated my former girlfriend, and Chloe wasn't left stranded because she ended our relationship. Ryan lost his career because he chose to misuse company resources for personal gain, and Chloe suffered because she placed her trust in appearances instead of integrity. I simply fulfilled my responsibility by protecting the company from fraud the moment undeniable evidence appeared. Their downfall wasn't created by my actions. It was created by their own decisions long before I ever canceled a corporate card. Some people believe success comes from taking shortcuts and gambling with other people's trust, but those shortcuts eventually reach a dead end. They gambled with honesty, responsibility, and accountability, believing nobody would ever notice. In the end, they lost far more than a vacation. They lost their reputations, their relationship, and the futures they thought were guaranteed. While I walked away with something far more valuable than revenge, a peaceful life built on integrity, and the confidence that doing the right thing, even when it is difficult, will always outlast deception.